I'm Meehan with Medpricer and here with Joe Walsh today, founder of Supply Chain Sherpas. We're talking a little bit about how technology can help healthcare supply chains. You know, Joe, one question we always have is, under what conditions should a healthcare system really start looking at solutions for purchase services, not just from a services or body standpoint, labor standpoint, but from a technology system standpoint? What are the indicators that they're ready for technology?
Yeah, it's a really interesting insight to pause and pay attention to, because a lot of times organizations try to consider the features that they need before they recognize the precursors that are necessary. So I can almost call it precursors. Without the executive support for the areas they're trying to resolve, it doesn't matter, right? Technology can't come in because there's nothing to solve for. So just as an example to kind of make this relevant to your space, to sell technology in the space of purchase services without purchase services being important at the executive level of the organization, and I mean beyond supply chain, at the C-suite of the organization, can happen. Because it has to be important for the organization to go and solve something meaningful in the space of purchase services before tech is needed. Other precursors are going to be things like, have they invested in the people, or are they committed to invest in the people necessary to actually go and transform the space of purchase services? If the answer is no, they don't need technology to enable a process they can't run. Have they defined the process in order to actually, again, go automate that process? Because technology should always be enabling a process, not inventing something they're not doing. If technology doesn't come in and somehow minimize or somehow simplify something that the team's already doing, trying to invent work, which is what it will feel like for a supply chain team that is already stretched, to say, hey, we're going to give you technology to do something you're not already doing today, that just won't sell in healthcare because they're already resource constrained. So the goal is, how do you clear the runway to make sure that it's already important, they already have resources focused on it, and they already know how to do it. When those three precursors are actually navigated, then technology can actually make them have exponential throughput and exponential impact. But until then, technology, no matter how compelling it is, just can't get implemented. And that's not specific to the technology that you offer. It's specific to anyone offering technology solutions into the supply chain function.
And that's what we've seen from, the majority of our customers who are the most successful have executive visibility into what we're doing, and it's, really change management push from the top down, and everyone's on the same page and aware that it's an important initiative. When you look at the technology platform itself, though, what things are needed? What qualities does a software provider need to have to be successful in providing a solution to healthcare supply chain?
Yeah, and we'll start with the tech-related stuff. Software as a service, just as an infrastructure, is far more digestible in today's world than going with the traditional software solution. There's no question. And having a platform strategy also makes sense, where you have multiple modules where you can solve a bigger problem. The more point solution oriented that it is, the more challenging it is to digest it, because a lot of these healthcare systems have invested a lot of money in ERP systems. And of course, they got the big EMR systems as well. And so they've been conditioned to use these big systems. And so when you come in as a company, they don't want to be cherry picked with best of breed solutions. They need things that don't compete with the EMR or ERP, but actually augment or complement in big ways. So to the extent that the solution does that, that helps. Software as a service as just an infrastructure and an approach is very, very helpful and easy to digest. Ease of use. If it's not super easy to use and doesn't require a lot of training, it becomes, the barrier to entry is just too high. So if you had to choose between ease of use or rich in features to do really complex things, right? So it's go with simplicity every single time, just because you got to meet the supply chain where they're at today, and then through releases you can actually kind of take them to their highest level of potential. But don't try to solve their problems of tomorrow, try to solve their problems of today, so that they actually can see the value of it today. There's a lot of stuff that's been kind of overbuilt for healthcare based on where they are today. And then solution providers that are actually healthcare specific and can acknowledge the nuances are actually going to thrive. And also, in this context of this conversation, somebody who really understands the nuances of purchase services and doesn't try to say what worked in pharmacy so it'll work in purchase services, or because it worked in PPI it'll work in purchase services. Services are different. And I think folks that actually understand how it's different and can articulate that and actually build solutions around that are going to thrive. Now, that's technically. Probably the most important piece is to not ignore the services, because these supply chain functions do not have resources to actually even lead purchase services in most cases, let alone implement a solution. So somehow you got to have the technology enablers, the people, to be able to come in and actually make this technology seamless to actually adopt into the organization. So having folks, whether those are folks that come in and help with sourcing or folks that help with technology adoption, without the kind of services to kind of enable the tech, like services, then I think the tech becomes very, very difficult to digest.
How many organizations do you see out there that are able to handle both sides of that equation?
Well, right now, if you were to kind of look at the landscape, and kind of look at it as you've got tech-specific companies and you've got services companies, like think about a 2x2, and then you've got kind of narrow or broad focus. And I could name them, but right now, Medpricer seems to be the only company that's actually in the broad category on that 2x2 and is doing products and services. And then the most probably interesting attribute of Medpricer, which I've even learned recently, and it's a very, very helpful attribute, maybe one of the most important attributes, is the configurability of the actual offering, to be able to say, I need this much tech and I need this much service, or I need all tech and no service, or all service and no tech. And to be able to configure that offering with a very, very broad offering is something I think makes the offering from Medpricer very distinctive and different from the competitors that you have in the landscape.
And we appreciate that, and that's something that we're really striving to do is, listen to the voice of our customers. They want that software to be flexible, depending on the maturity of the organization or their focus. They may be interested in spend analytics. They may be interested in benchmarking. They may be at a time when they're ready to actually run, electronic RFPs. So we have that whole spectrum covered, but have been able to break it up in a way that allows them to digest it most easily. And then on top of that, our 13 years of experience in purchase services allow us to jump on with their team and really help them from a services perspective as well. So, I appreciate that insight and that, and that's really something we're, looking to be a part of from a purchase service perspective.
Absolutely, and it's great insight. And I frankly before didn't realize how configurable the offering was. And now I think I've even become more aware of very specific point solutions that you actually have. Things like your precision benchmarking. I mean, that's something where I didn't realize the power of that, to be able to say, not only do I know what's now possible in a very specific category, but it's almost a playbook to be able to say, if you ran this play, these specific strategies in this category, here are the results that you could potentially achieve. I mean, that's incredibly powerful to be able to do something like that. In other industries that I've been part of, Sourcing Industry Group does things like that, these category profiles almost, with category strategy playbooks that come along with that. Those are incredibly powerful tools. And you've got that, I think, across almost 80 categories now of purchase services, which blew me away.
Yeah, we're adding those every day, and the really cool thing is that our customers are able to use them in a variety of ways, like you mentioned, like plays. So whether it's just taking that benchmark, going to the incumbent and saying, this is the situation, let's avoid going to RFP, this is what the market is telling us, or using it as a rally point to get stakeholders and executive leadership on board saying, we need a competitive event here. The savings, the improvement in the service levels, all those things are so compelling based on what the market is telling us that we need to go, put this thing out to competitive bid.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of healthcare systems are trending, towards that precision benchmarking service right now.
I appreciate that. Mickey, the last thing I wanted to just mention to you is we need, as supply chain professionals, we can't do this all ourselves. The healthcare supply chain needs service providers that are actually dedicated to elevating them. I walk trade shows a lot. When I walk trade shows, I notice there's two different types of players in the room. There are companies like Stryker and Medtronic and all these really important organizations that are selling solutions to our clinicians and to our hospital operators, and supply chain has all of their attention focused on them. And they should be. That's who the customer is inside the healthcare supply chain. And then there's companies like Medpricer who are trying to help the supply chain do its job better. And a lot of times, supply chain just doesn't give itself the time to pause and look for solutions like that because it's so focused on serving its internal customer. And so again, my invitation back to the supply chain leaders are take a time out, pause, and serve yourself, right? Serve yourself for just a moment. Invest in the organization that you want to become tomorrow, today, so that you can actually help your stakeholders tomorrow. And that means building capabilities. You don't just invest in people, you got to invest in comprehensive solutions. So I'm glad that Medpricer exists in our industry so that you guys can help elevate the healthcare supply chain profession. And now what we got to do is get supply chain folks to just slow down, not try and do it all themselves, recognize that they're unconsciously already using a lot of service providers like GPOs in a lot of these same spaces, and then recognize the comprehensiveness of solution providers like yourself.
And we appreciate that. And we also appreciate all the wisdom today that you're sharing here with us and everyone else. And we wish you the best of luck with Supply Chain Sherpas as you take it out to the market.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me here.